I recently did a video on Facebook Live, and I talked about beliefs and how beliefs can be a problem to us. Beliefs in religion, beliefs in science, our own personal beliefs that we make up about the world that keep us away from the truth, and most importantly keep us away from personal experience of spiritual world. And it got me thinking, I think, because I woke up this morning having an amazing dream. The most important part of it was that I was sat watching the dawn come up. And we were sat in a jungle-like environment. It was dark. We could hear, in the dream, I could hear the sounds of the animals and birds. And I was with a group of people that were kind of almost, I think, primitive man, early archaic man. We were not quite human. We were half ape, half human. And we were sat in wonder, watching the dawn come up. That's a pretty bizarre dream. But obviously my unconscious had probably been working on this idea of beliefs. Because when you watch the dawn, it must have been an absolute miracle to the people of those early archaic days, those first men and women. You imagine, the world is dark, foreboding, dangerous, full of dangerous animals, and yet every day the dawn breaks. It must have been absolutely wondrous, because now the world was not quite such a dangerous place. Now the world was a place we could see and walk in. So it was luminous. It was awake, So obviously the first and most important thing, even before the sun, is the idea of light, because we see the light even before we see the sun. And the first religions obviously saw the sun as a god, because, you're going to. This thing that comes up on the horizon is absolutely mind-bogglingly beautiful, and it's something that takes away all our troubles. So I can see that the first people would have looked upon that as some form of God. And I think, another thing about early people, the very first people, I'm talking about the people before the invention of the wheel, before the invention of fire. I'm talking way, way back in our history when our own inner dawn was just beginning, our own birth of consciousness was coming. We must have thought in a completely different way. We weren't thinking logically. We weren't probably thinking properly in language at all by that time. Thoughts were probably not something we owned. They must have come to us from our unconscious side of our brain, our intuitive side of our brain, like they just appeared, like spirits, So we didn't have quite the same sense of identity and I that we have now. Although we had it to a smaller degree. So things like nature were still part of us. We were still it. It was still part of our being. There was less distinction between the inner and outer world. And I'm sure animals also have that same dawning consciousness. When I started thinking about this later, about this dream, I thought also about our animal Gizzy, our cat. He was a fabulous cat. He looked like Batman. He had huge, great ears. And early in his life, as a kitten, he got, just as a bit older than a kitten, but in his first years, he contracted cancer. And we were really worried for him. And I remember sitting watching him. He sat up on top of our conservatory roof, so I could sit in the chair, and I was looking up, and he was sat there, and the sun was going down. And he was watching it as if he was watching, it was like, I was thinking, God, it's like watching your own demise, like the sun sets on your life. And it seemed such a sad scene. And yet it seemed that Gizzy there understood something. He understood that sun as something, it was as if he was contemplating it, in the same way that early man must have contemplated the dawn that I've just described, So animals too know about light. Perhaps they even have a fundamental idea that there's a God, in that it's a symbol, it's the light, So early man worshipped the sun, didn't we? We worship the sun as our God. And we still see light as the greatest expression of consciousness. When a person has enlightenment, it's described in the idea of light, waking up, illumination. But in reality, it's not a real light. It's not a light like the world of the sun. It's a different type of light. It's a divine light, which is totally different. But the closest we can describe it in material terms is as a light, like the sun. So the sun actually is still very much the symbol of God even to this day. And it influenced all the religions of the world, of course, didn't it? It influenced everywhere. But let me think. I was thinking also about, okay, so our first experience was of the sun. But then also, really, civilization was really born when we started burying our dead. Because, we don't eat our dead, we don't discard our dead, we don't leave them behind. When we bury the dead, we are therefore thinking that that person is special, that something is going to happen to them. There's an indication by burying a dead person that we're giving them back. We're not just seeing them as just discarded like the rest of the world around us. And in particular, they used to point the dead to face the sun. So therefore, there's the first religious belief, isn't it? We're pointing the dead to face the sun, as if the sun comes every morning to help us, and we point it to the sun. And they also would put ochre on the face, which is like a blood-like colour in a way. So we put blood on the face, because that is also life. So we have life, and we put the person in the ground, and we face them towards the sun. So those first archaic people were probably thinking something like this. They must have thought to themselves, there's the dawn. Was there a first dawn? Was there a time back in our ancestors when there was only one dawn, when the first dawn came? So that would have been their first creation story, wouldn't it? And we still think of it as let there be light. The idea that there was a first dawn sometimes. I don't think the first people would have thought about the creation of the stars and all the rest of it and the earth itself. They probably thought first about the first dawn, the first time light came into the world, the first illumination. Because that's what was happening to them as archaic people. Their consciousness was dawning. And they must have also thought about a last dawn. Will the dawn ever stop? They used to worship the sun all the time to make sure the dawn came every morning. But what if the dawn didn't come? What would happen then? So when we bury our dead, we point them to the sun in the anticipation that maybe at the last dawn, they may be able to get out of the ground and be born again. So this is where the whole idea of resurrection came from. That a lot of people believe the idea of the resurrection, that you physically get out of the ground. The Jewish beliefs, for example, believe that on the Holy Mount, that the first people to resurrect after at the end of days is the person that crawls out of the ground is on the Mount of Mount of Olives, is it, or on the Holy Mount, whatever. But the idea still persists in all the religions. This idea of a physical resurrection, which must have come from the very, very earliest of religions. So the idea that God is light is a very powerful one, isn't it? The idea that it's come from an ancient mind. It's not. It's something that people still believe to this day. It's the most powerful belief of them all in many ways, because it must have been one of our first beliefs. And man even got to the point where we could capture the sun, couldn't we? We became the Prometheus. We made the fire. We owned the sun. We had a little bit of our own sun here. And man from that point knew that they were the masters of their own fate. They were the carriers of the light, not just dependent upon the sun that arose. So symbolically, it's a fantastic story that gave birth to all the myths and all the stories in religions, all the ideas of the dawn of mankind's consciousness. And it amazed me that even now, that powerful feeling can come up in a dream. That I can have a dream of the dawn of the light, the opening of our awareness. And I like to think sometimes about what it was like in those ancient times, when we were the early men and women, when we first started to get the dawn of consciousness. In terms of our evolution, it's probably not that far away, really. Although, like I say, we see it in animals and we see it in ourselves, but still we're very influenced, even to this moment, in all the things we do, by those old memories, those things that go right back to ancient times. And that really is where our beliefs originated from. And we have to turn those beliefs now into a new form of experience, into a form of experience where we can go beyond the objective idea that it's a physical person climbing out of the ground when a person is kind of reborn into higher consciousness, and see it now as a complete evolution of ourselves. That physically we see a snake shed its skin, but we also shed a skin in order to go into a higher level awareness. That we have evolved way beyond those first dawn of consciousness. But it's still important to remember where we came from with it all, where our roots come, and how many of our ideas can be influenced by very kind of primitive ideas, very primal ideas, very primordial concepts that still are at the bedrock of who we are. Anyway, that's my thought for today. All right, thanks for listening. Check out our website for more stuff. You can book psychic readings with us and find out about our public events, or watch our fantastic movie called Mystic Journey to India. It's a mind-boggling adventure that's now showing on Amazon Prime. And if you want to learn more, you can find out about my books and courses. Check out Messages from the Universe that reveals the ancient secrets of existence, or read my book called Psychic School to discover and enhance your own psychic skills. Or how about What to Do When You're Dead, my book about the afterlife and what it's like. All this plus lots more, lots of new articles and videos, all on my fascinating website.